welcome to the news roundup for the week. You will see I have a little bit of a different configuration going on here. The reason for that is the way that I had things set up in the pod shack didn't really like. I have somebody who wants to come and like record here with me, and the way the things were set up was just not really conducive for that. So I've moved things around. My shelf of tchotchkes. I promise I've not gotten rid of the pig pooping on its own balls autographed by the photographer. It's all still over there. I promise. We're gonna move it on back here. So you get to see my calendar, which honestly I erased half of it off before I started this video, but you can see I have jury duty pretty soon. Very excited about jury duty. Jury duty is pretty great. Highly recommend it, especially if you have one of those jobs that will continue to pay you while you do it, because I have one of those. It's fantastic. I was foreman last time, and it's not, you know what? It's not a power thing, but because I'm reasonably intelligent and don't like cops, I always try to get on juries to be like, no, I'm smart and fuck cops, and that guy can go. So hopefully the jury selection board isn't watching this, but also I am very fair and impartial. Thank you. However, we've got some things to get to. This thing, we'll see how this kind of goes. There's a lot of echo in here. I'm going to be putting up some foam board, some dampening stuff. I know it's 2023 and I'm doing all the shit. I'm like having all the revelations that like any like halfway decent streamer learned 10 years ago. I'm just slow on the uptake and fuck it. I've been doing a non-visual medium for so long. And the reason for that was because I didn't want to have to think about any of this stuff. Like, it's so much harder to have to think about, like, am I looking in the right place? Is this going on? Does my background look okay? You don't want anything like that going on. So, moving over to this visual medium has been nice. I'm enjoying kind of piling stuff on here. So, let's go ahead and get to it. So we're going to do some news. I've got two things with news. Belarus. God bless these guys, man. I really love any country that, like, there are things that you should be doing with your military. Like, you should be training them how to win your fucking wars. Belarus doesn't do that, I don't think. I think what they train their guys to do is insane backflips, rocket boots, breaking concrete blocks with their heads. That's what the Belarusian military learns, not, shoot, move, and communicate that the American ones do. So, and Belarus very buddy with Russia. There's speculation that Belarus might join or at least allow Russia to move through Belarus, opening up a different front. So fuck them. They suck ass. But the thing is that these guys have got, like, look at this, man. This is a man who is just doing spins on a chin-up bar, and I'm gonna tell you too. Let's pause it here. This is ACFT right here. This is an ACFT event that Belarusians have. They don't have to do the pull the chin. No, you got to do this with your smoky rocket boots. Now I want you guys to also take a look at what's going on down here in the front, because I feel like when you're doing this parade thing, everybody like plays to their strengths, but Belarus really wants everybody to be involved. Either it's because they only have so many people, or they really want you to feel good about yourself. So, like, even if you're not like rocket boot swing soldier, you can be one of the soldiers that's down here just kind of doing some taekwondo. Like, not even taekwondo, you're just doing some oh, yep, and we're gonna move. Rocket boot. He's lost one of his rockets, but it's still going, still trucking along. Some say he's still spinning to these days. We got some more concrete block breaking. Something I'm curious about this. How cold is it in Belarus right now? Because they're all wearing cold weather gear, so seems a little suspicious, but still, we still have grown men breaking concrete blocks with letters written on it. I assume it's spelling something out. Perhaps "Go Army, Beat Navy." Does Belarus have a navy? I don't know. I certainly don't know if they have a rivalry. Maybe the Navy does the rocket boot thing, but on a boat somewhere. Could be. But these guys, a lot of concrete block breaking over the foreheads. If you really really want to give your soldiers TBIs, just go to war. Like, you have a lot less to clean up. Well, probably you have more to clean up. I guess it's a lot easier to like give your soldiers a TBI and then sweep up some broken concrete that you got going on. Yeah, maybe. All right, their runoff. Now this is one of my favorite parts, and I've got another video we'll watch, but this is my favorite part because first off, this image of a top-down, for better lack of a better terms, Bronco. Like this is like something that there is no roll cage on this. Like it has a windshield, and if it flips over, a bunch of dead soldiers in it. So we're rolling up a bunch of dudes in berets and green tank tops. Coming, this is your party. Here they come, and they all gop out. Now, again, the desire that I assume Belarus has to make sure that everybody gets to be involved, and we'll see some more of it in the next video too. This is the mechanic shop. Like, what are we showing off here? Other than these guys are really good at some precision disassembly of this very specific Jeep. But they're not even doing it, they're just taking it apart. And we speed it up a little bit, and we've got all of these parts. Now, I am going to say, though, having a vehicle that is this easy to put together and take apart is pretty fucking great. Like, the U.S. military would never, because we've got to have all of our shit created by insane contractors. They've got to have 17 pintle mounts. Here we go, we get that. We're going to get the wheels off. These guys have got it going on. Like, look at this. Like, this is a pit stop. Just to take it apart. And really what this is showing is how great of a, just any kind of logistical system that they have. Do they have that? Probably not. But these guys can take apart a Jeep really fast. And that is cool. I can't do that. I can't do any of these things. Rocket boot guy, I can't do that. Breaking concrete with my skull, I could probably do that, but I don't want to do that. And taking this thing apart, man. Like, you got like 10 people here who got to work in tandem. I don't know 10 people who I can do this with. So, shout out to the Belarusian army. I don't think you're going to win a war anytime soon, but you're going to win parades. Like, this is very much, and at some point we're going to have to find some old videos of the Tank Olympics when everybody would show up with like a T-62 painted in your country's colors, but only like Russia and Armenia and South Ossetia and Georgia and all those countries got to go play. So we didn't get to. But fantastic stuff. A lot of really great, like tank biathlon. And they're doing all kinds of great tank stuff. These guys would do, these guys are kind of a lesser version of that. But they'd be very good if they needed to take apart a T-62. I'm calling these guys up. So let's take a look at our other video here. We've got more concrete blocks. We've got pulling. We've got this. Okay, so this here, and I want to hold on. Let's go back to this guy because this is just a chav on a Saturday night, man. This is your punk bar. This is a guy has had like 4 malorts and is now just breaking bottles and glasses on his forehead. And everybody's confused. In the back, they're all shooting guns off. So perhaps this is a conventional Belarusian greeting. A lot of Batman symbolism going on. This is not the first Batman symbol I've seen in some of these. So the motherfuckers are DC all the way. No Marvel fans here. Yeah, more concrete blocks, breaking one by one, you, and then you, and then you, and then all of us together. I assume that's kind of an army of one. We're all individual, but we also work as a team, getting traumatic brain injuries. And then, the 42 alphas. Again, what do you got? What do you got? Dudes who take care of all the awards and process leave stuff and do all the paperwork. I got a fucking table. I got a table, Sergeant. Let's go. And here he is. The goddamn the PAO, the 42 Alpha, all of the male specialists, all the pogues right here with a fold-up table. Look at this. I can carry it without my hands. He's got it balanced on his fucking chin and dick. That is a non-combat fucking NCO. That is a man who knows everything about everything except combat, especially how to transport his tape. All right, more concrete breaking, more Batman. Fire sticks that we're doing now. Not even hitting them with the fire. Breaking through walls, which I assume is allegorical. Breaking through Batman walls. Boom! It's siding. Like they went to Home Depot. Look at this. They went to Home Depot and got like some siding and spray paint and put a Batman symbol on that, and then had somebody very awkwardly not break through it. And then some fighting, and that's it. That's what we have for the Belarusian military. Now, again, so you can see these guys are all shirtless, and the other ones we saw they were wearing a lot of cold weather gear. So I'm going to say that these probably aren't all from the same get together. Like this doesn't even honestly this doesn't even look like it's in front of a whole lot. Like this is just what they're doing. Like those are probably their barracks. It's a military base, and it's just like TikTok stars. That's what this is. This is all TikTok stuff. This is the woke millennial or woke Gen Z army here. They're all out like breaking concrete blocks and loving the DC universe instead of Marvel, pulling their Ladas instead of driving them because it's better for the environment. Belarus, man, the wokest army. They're not even fighting wars. They're not even training to fight a war because they're too busy with their rocket boots. They've got to perfect rocket boot technology before they can take on anybody. So, but once they do, watch out. All right. So that's the Belarusians. Let's take a look at what else we've got in our news. Belarus. We've got Ukraine has combat kayaks now. God bless. God bless this country. Look at this. Um, so this I have to be the pedantic asshole. Technically not a technical because these are kayaks that are being specifically built and created for this purpose. This is a prototype vehicle, but it's basically a kayak with a small motor on the back and a pintle mount on the front. Everything that you would need from what would be considered a technical, but asterisk this one. The technical does need to be a civilian vehicle in its former life that has been taken and repurposed into military. So if you're like, hey, I'm going to build a kayak for war, you've already negated it. Now, if you go into Dick's Sporting Goods and you say, pull that kayak down, we're going to use it for war, now you got a technical. So just a little distinction, but I'm also going to say that technically tomato is a fruit, but you don't put it in a fruit salad, right? Because we've got conventional wisdom. And really, I love Riverine shit. Like like we have too much, deep water Navy stuff. And the reason why, if a while ago there was a big blow up about how Coast Guard cutters were over in the Gulf overseas. Like, why is the Coast Guard over there? They guard the coast. That's not our coast. Why are they there? It's because the Marines don't really have anything that's flat bottom to do up, coastal defense or coastal stuff, going into rivers, things like that. The Coast Guard does because they stay close to the coast. This also Riverine stuff is so phenomenal. Because you've got to turn your your rivers into battlefields just as much as you got to turn your oceans into them. During the Civil War, a lot of ironclads were going up and down the Mississippi River, which were like kind of the first not like I'm not going to say the first warships, but they kind of had like a half submarine thing going. They were like mostly submerged, but they were river going vessels basically, which I live next to the Mississippi. I have no idea how that works. I know that like the river back then was a lot different than the river is back now, and the shoals that I know and the rapids that I know and the chain of rocks area, that stuff doesn't really exist back 150 years, 160 years at this point. But it is interesting to watch to learn how people do war on a river because I grew up on a river. So that's like my one Navy nerd thing is riverine operations because it just is it's a completely different game and battlefields, entirely different tactics to it. Vietnam, same thing. Going up the river in PT boats versus being a destroyer out on the sea. So, but I love this thing. they don't have it in like use yet. It's kind of all this is just like let's drive around. We'll slap a Mark 19 on it. We'll paddle around and show how this works. I'm gonna tell you this thing is very much a sitting duck. I don't like you can kind of get away, and I don't know, maybe with the PT boats too was the same problem where you just don't really like if somebody starts shooting at you, you don't really have anything that you can do. You can't like maybe you can jump out into the water. I would hope that kind of a secondary portion of this is that you can jump out of the water and it's somewhat armored against I don't know light 7.62 rounds. I don't know. I'm interested to see more of it, but I I gotta love a beautiful new technical. No matter where you put them down, and some people will be even more purist and say it's got to have wheels. But you know what? In a war like this, that Ukraine is trying to fight off Russia, you use whatever you can, and if it means going to Dick's Sporting Goods with a can of black spray paint, then you go to Dick's Sporting Goods with a can of black spray paint. And God bless them. That's why they're still in this fight. So this question comes from the Discord. If you either give at least $1 to my Patreon or to the Lines Led by Donkeys Patreon, you get into the Discord. Joe's always asking questions in there for his show. I asked, hey dad questions in there for me. So if you ever have any of those, you can also DM me anything if you ever got a hey dad question. I do enjoy doing these because I know that there's a lot of knowledge out there that people don't have. That is just like little things that I know I picked up. So like this one, 3 things everyone should know about car maintenance. Uh, I've owned cars since I was 16, 17, maybe. Yeah, somewhere around there. I've been driving for more than 20 years. I don't really care for it anymore, but I drove a lot because I had to because I lived in the middle of America and there's no other option to go to work and go to school other than to have a car. So definitely car maintenance has been a big thing. I've not always been great at it, but I did learn a lot of car maintenance from a buddy of mine who was kind of an amateur mechanic. So he taught me a lot of things, and then I did work. So I worked for a while at a Walmart Tire Lube Express, which I know is not like a mechanic, like where mechanics are, but some of the people there that worked there were mechanics and did, kind of show me some other stuff. So I do have like a better than most people understanding of the underside of a car. I know how to change oil and filter. I know how to change a brake system. I've done, the brakes up front. I've done, you know, stuff in the differentials and back, always with somebody. So I'm kind of giving you my bona fides here but where I understand I'm not a mechanic, but I am a person who's owned cars for a long time, and I can tell you some things that you definitely should have. Uh, Whoop, excuse me. So here's a few things that you definitely should have. Your first thing. So here's some things. So here's some things that you definitely should have. Just some things that I threw together that I know have always helped me out. So number one, tire pressure gauge. Have one. They cost like $1. You will have to go to a AutoZone or something to get them, but they're usually like an impulse buy up at the front because, and it's like the only place to do that you have those as an impulse buy. Those should be like in grocery stores next to the candy and the tabloids should be, here's like 20 tire pressure gauges. Uh, Also know how much pressure needs to be in each tire. That information, if you open up your driver's side door and you look on the door, not on the door, but on the frame of the car, there'll be a sticker. That sticker has a lot of basic information in it, but it has the pressure that your car tires should be. When in doubt, 32, between 30 and 32 psi, pounds per square inch is fine. Uh, you know what, I have one in both of my cars, and one just came in handy because of the tire pressure, the light came on, and my wife said, "Oh, the light's on." every once in a while, you run over a nail or something like that, and you end up getting a slow leak, and you want to find that and be like, oh, we can get this taken care of before it becomes something worse. It's a lot cheaper to have a nail pulled out and a patch put in than it is to have to replace an entire tire. So, but this also does go with just basic tire knowledge, like know what a bald tire is and means. Know that like when you see metal kind of sticking out, you have to replace that tire. That's part of the radial coming out. You don't want that. Bald tires make it hard. One, you can get a blowout, and two, they don't have the traction that you need. So if it's slippery or something, you know, tires get overlooked a lot, and it sucks because tires are fucking expensive. And when you get tires, it makes sense to get four at a time, and you're talking about dropping like $400 or $500. I'm the kind of guy who gets the cheap 40,000 mile tires, whatever. Maybe they last that long. I don't know. I don't know how long they last. I get the cheap ones. I can get another set in like 4 years when I need them again. I don't know. But tire pressure gauge for the other day, I think like the pressure gauges just go off. Like one, if it gets too cold, the pressure gauges go off because I guess the air inside the tire shrinks, but it's still at 32 psi. So I don't know. But I went around, I tested all of them. Tires were fine, didn't have any leaks, good to go. So have a tire pressure gauge. Have and a working knowledge of like, oh, that tire looks fucked up and needs to be replaced. Next up, just like sex, you gotta know what to put where. I figured if I'm gonna be giving you dad advice, I gotta make it uncomfortable and talk about fucking. But what this means is oil, transmission fluid, washer fluid, all the little bits and bobs that you got to put inside of your car on a regular basis. You should know what they are and where they go and how to check them. These will be in your owner's manual, but every car basically has same kind of basic concepts for oil and transmission. So turn your car off. Find underneath your hood. You find the dipstick. It's going to be yellow. You're going to pull it. You're going to paper towel. You're going to pull it out. Run it through the paper towel. Clean it off. Put it back in all the way in. Pull it back out. You're going to be able to see how much oil you have in the car. The dipstick will have a kind of an indicator. There'll be like about a half inch that's going to be like all hashes, and that's if your oil is in there, then if the line is in that area, then you're good to go. So know that transmission fluid is similar, but you have to turn the car on and have the car running if you have an automatic transmission. And the washer fluid, that one's a little bit easier to tell. It's gonna look like a big plastic kind of like tub thing that you're gonna dump it into. But just other things like that. And because if your car doesn't have oil in it, your engine's is gonna snap in half. Same with your transmission fluid. So, and look, it's not. Some people are like, you got to check this stuff 2 times a week. No. If you're getting regular oil changes, you don't have to worry about checking your oil. If you don't, though, you should be checking it regularly, putting in a quart when it needs it, and just having the stuff around. Power steering fluid's another one. Highly recommend having a little bit of power steering fluid around because that goes out. You're gonna be able to drive, but like if you're not old enough to ever have driven a car that didn't have power steering, fuck that noise. So make sure that you know what you need to put into it. What kind of fluids need to go into it, what kind of care handling, tire rotations, oil changes, things like that. Know when to do those things. It sucks to have to put the money in the car, but if you don't, the car is going to come for your money one way or the other, the longer that you have it. All right, finally, keep it clean inside and out. This is an argument that I have, well, not an argument, because it's not my car, it's my wife's car. But dear God, do I hate sitting in that car. It's got so many smells in it. And it's because it's the car that she and my daughter are in, and like during the day, sometimes they have to live in that car, driving from appointments and here, there, and everywhere else. So, it's gross. There's like old McDonald's fries on the, outside of it. But so put a little trash bag in your car, just a little bag that you can throw your trash in, so that once you're just, when the bag gets full, you grab it and you take it out to a dumpster and you get rid of it, and it's fantastic. More people should be doing this. we're kind of good at it, but the kids in the back, and there's just a lot of when you're not getting your eyes on it in the back seat, you lose track of it. You don't see how gross it gets. But I will also say the outside too. A lot of people will kind of turn their nose up to car washes as being extravagant or wasteful or unnecessary to the environment. But if you have a car, you need to get that thing washed a couple of times a year. Just because if you don't, you're going to start getting grime buildup, especially on the underside. And during the winter, salt. Streets get salted, then the snow or ice or whatever gets churned up with the salt, and then it sticks to the bottom of your car, and then you have like salty snow that's corroding the bottom of your car, and it's no good. A lot of drive-through car washes will have a option for the undercoat that you can get an undercoat kind of sprayed on to protect against that. Definitely pay for that once a year or so, but you keep it clean. And the thing is when you do that, when you do keep it clean inside and out, you also think of doing other maintenance things. And you think maybe I should check the oil, or maybe hey, they're stop off at this AutoZone and grab a tire pressure gauge. You can also buy some of them have tread gauges that will show you how you can put it on the tire and it shows you how deep the tread is. But the trick that I learned was that if you can take a penny and hold it upside down so you see Abraham Lincoln's head is pointing down, and if you put it in the tire tread and you get even with it and you can see the top of his head, like his head is completely uncovered by tire, you need new tires. So keep that in mind when you're doing that. But keeping things clean is also maintenance. But in the Army, we got to clean shit. The Navy's got to clean shit constantly too. When you keep your shit clean, you keep it maintained. That's just how it works. And the thing is, I'm your dad, and I'm to tell you this. And I know you're not going to do it, but maybe some of you will, or maybe you'll do half of it. And that's that's enough of the battle that I can win to make sure that you guys have what you need. So our readings this week come from the American Exile in Britain. Specifically picked this one for Nate. But the American Exile in Britain was a news zine, newsletter that was created. There's a lot of talk about how people would flee to Canada to escape the draft. There are people who fled, to other places. England was one of them. So this is kind of a zine that has been created in tandem not only with these people who call themselves exiles in Britain, but Vietnam Veterans Against War movement. Kind of the overall larger movement that a lot of these places kind of modeled themselves on, loosely affiliated with, things like that. Not necessarily like, yes, we're working directly with these people, but like, spiritually kind of the same. Now this has and I wonder about comic syndication back then as well, because if you're old and dying like me, you'll remember that the comics section of the newspaper used to have comics in it. They doesn't really have that anymore. They've gotten a lot smaller. The ones here in St. Louis, like, it's shrunk down to half a page, and like at least 3 of them are like reruns. They're just rerunning like For Better or For Worse and Snoopy and shit like that. So now this one has a Wizard of Id comic in it, which is one that maybe is a little bit. I used to read a lot of these things, so it's kind of, I think it's done by the same guy who did Hagar the Horrible, which were just very basic drawn cartoons and everything. But it's got that in it. I don't see any advertisements, but there are a lot of different. There's different comics in it that are all very political. Some more political than others. But so we're gonna read from here. We've got a lot of kind of smaller pieces here, and we're gonna jump around a little bit for inside of this one. Now this was published in 1973, so kind of keep that in mind as we're talking about this. For reference, just so I don't have to interrupt myself later. Jimmy Carter didn't pardon all the draft dodgers until 1977. So these guys are still like technically in dire straits with the military. Quote: the public prints team with falsehoods and misrepresentations to induce you to credit things as far from our design as the conduct of those at the helm of the national affairs is. Long have we been endeavoring to find ourselves men. Now we find ourselves so. We will be treated as such. End quote. So these three that we're going to do come from the same gentleman, Heinz Norden. Heinz, from what I can gather, was he was a World War II veteran who turned into a tenants' right activist, and was a big part of the anti-war movement, as a lot of people were. There were a lot of like kind of those kinds of hippies that are just like they're around and they got stuff going on. They kind of rotate in and out of various publications that we see here or other places. The various publications you could always get published in things like this. So, off the Isle of Sheppey in the Thames estuary, where the third London airport is said to be built, lies a sandbank called the Nore. Just 175 years ago, when more than 24 ships of the Royal Navy lay anchored there, the most serious mutiny in the history of England broke out. The words cited above are from the manifesto of the mutineers, but they could well be applied to the plight of the oppressed seamen, principally black, in the United States Navy in the year 1972. Just as an aside, the black liberation and homosexual liberation, as it was in the time 50 years ago, were very forefront to a lot of these pieces that are being written. Last week we talked. I read from somebody who was gay and in the military in the 70s. A lot of the things here are from sometimes being written by some of the black soldiers, but there's definitely a kind of a, hey, we understand that, not only is it bad for everybody, but it's kind of worse for these guys. The mutiny at the Nore was not originally political. It protested inhuman conditions in which the tars were forced to work, their failure to even get the pitiful pay due to them. Still, the French Revolution fired the imagination of the workers everywhere, and the Nore Manifesto was signed, "Your loving brothers read forever." Before the mutiny was finally starved out, 23 mutineers were hanged, including their leader, Richard Parker. Its Central Committee had resolved to petition the French Covenant for the projection, as the only government that can understand the rights of man. Airmen are virtually the only American servicemen stationed in Britain. In our realistic efforts to rebuild among them a movement of political awareness to replace the ones cunningly smashed with discharges by the brass a year or so ago, let us not overlook that in this century sailors on 2 occasions spearheaded revolutionary change. The sailors of Kronst in Russia in 1917 and the sailors of Kiel in Germany a year later. It's always a little like, oh God, we're bringing up Russia and Germany. But in times where it wasn't as frightening, you know what? We're not going to get into the politics of 1917 of either Russia or Germany. But let's move on. Troubled U.S. carriers. When assembled, the scattered reports of trouble aboard the U.S. naval vessels adds up to a remarkable picture of spontaneous activism. Much of the trouble has revolved around blacks fighting against oppression and discrimination, but the war in Southeast Asia is never far in the background, and often very much to the fore. No fewer than 5 of America's aircraft carriers have been involved in difficulties: the Kitty Hawk, the Constellation, the Ranger, the Enterprise, and the Oriskany. Precisely where these various cases arising from these difficulties stand at time of writing, let alone the time you read this, is not always easy to ascertain, for the press, as well as the armed services, has been coy in its publicity. And when the information is available, it is usually one-sided. The guilt of those charged is taken for granted. Perhaps the outstanding incident is the $1 million, well close to it, damage done to the reduction gears that last July delayed the Ranger's return to Vietnam for almost 4 months. The Navy charged Patrick Chenoweth with having thrown 2 bolts and a paint scraper into the gears. A federal judge last November urged the Navy to relax Fireman Chenoweth's close pretrial confinement when allegations of a previous teenage arrest proved false. There was Navy-inspired talk of shifting the court-martial to Subic Bay, Philippines, away from the limelight of public attention, which has resulted in a number of acquittals in important political cases. The case of the Kitty Hawk is of its particular significance because it illustrates that the Navy must be extremely worried. It arose from a riot between whites and blacks on the ship, and early in January, apprenticed airman Roundtree actually pleaded guilty to assault. He drew a surprising mild sentence, which was further reduced to the time he had already spent in the brig, while his supposedly bad conduct discharge turned out to be an honorable. Actually, here and there can be a little doubt as to who provided the trouble, and it is undisputed that the black, part Indian, executive officer, the second in command, was beaten up by the white troublemakers after he had issued orders calculated to lessen race friction, only to be disavowed by the captain. Fuck, dude. Like, so, I'm going to look more into the Kitty Hawk. I have talked about Patrick Chenoweth in the past, because it's incredible what he's been accused of, is that, like, 2 bolts and a paint scraper fucked up a Navy destroyer so badly that it couldn't go to war for, like, 4 months. That is insane and a bad decision. Like, that is Death Star exhaust port bad design there. But it's the Navy, and, you know, they were kind of cranking this shit out pretty quickly back in the day. So, you know, Patrick Chenoweth, like I said, we've talked about him before. I'm going to look into him more. The Kitty Hawk mutiny, quote-unquote mutiny, I have also talked about before as well. It's during this time, during Vietnam, there's so much that gets, you know, put on the battles and the war and the units, because that's, you know, what is... That's what like the war nerds really get into. But there's not as much discussion about these kinds of things, the back end stuff, especially during during conscription. You know, a lot of these guys that we talk about, sometimes when they're old enough to have been in World War II, Heinz Norden himself was a veteran of World War II, hated the Vietnam War. Was not very, it wasn't uncommon, we're going to say. So our final piece called News Suppressed. Some of the details have seeped into the general press, but much more detailed information is available in Camp News, a well-written and edited semi-monthly GI paper published at 2801 North Sheffield, Chicago, Illinois, $10 a year. Stories of sabotage to aircraft on bombing missions to Vietnam from Thailand bases that have been trickling out for months. In early January, however, Reuters broke the story that Captain Michael Heck, a B-52 crew commander, was to face court-martial for refusing to fly a combat mission over North Vietnam. At the same time, an unidentified B-52 crew member's letter to the senator was made public by the Los Angeles Times. It complained of inexcusable stupidity or laxity by the Strategic Air Command, which ordered missions to the same targets by the same routes on 3 successive nights, enabling the North Vietnamese SAM missiles to zero in. Quite barren of political ideology, the letter was nevertheless eloquent. "This cannot be tolerated," wrote the airman, "if it is the cost of life or if it's just one man, Vietnamese included. He said he would not fly another mission to Hanoi unless the route were changed. Nothing is worth my life, especially if it concerns something so foolish as a target that has already been bombed twice, or so foolish as a target that should never have been bombed in the first place." So this is an interesting kind of... This guy isn't necessarily against bombing the North Vietnamese. He's just against doing it in a way that, like, fucks up operational security, which this absolutely does. If you fly the same routes to the same place over and over, a thing that they told us, definitely don't do that in Iraq and Afghanistan because they will blow the shit out of you. But like, oh, look, the Americans drive by here at 3 o'clock every afternoon on Mondays. Guess what? So, the guy here, not exactly like unnecessary, like, I don't want to do this because I'm against the war. I do want to not do it because I don't want to die for stupid shit. So, some interesting things there. So again, this is all Heinz Norden. We'll take a look at a couple of other things too. Next up, we have some shorts. This is called UK Actions. And some of these, the first one I'm going to read, I like because I love sarcasm, especially in prayer. It's called Thanksgiving. The American Society in London is a club for rich Americans who get together twice a year, Thanksgiving and July 4th, for the sole purpose of celebrating the fact by stuffing their faces. For the past 5 years, members of Group 68 have shown up at the Dorchester Hotel in Park Lane, where the society commits its feast, to hand out leaflets about the war. This year, the UAEB took over the leafletting on Thanksgiving, handing out a Thanksgiving prayer, giving thanks for a long list of armaments and weapons used in Vietnam. Quote, "We're ever thankful," it said, "that our own great nation, which is only 6% of the world's people, consumes over 50% of the world's resources. We thank thee, Lord, that we can enjoy this feast, even while 1/3 of mankind goes hungry, and even though 40 million of our own countrymen live in poverty. Let them eat food stamps." The response of the fat cats ranged from fear to condescending humor. But they didn't say anything as they walked, and keeping their lips pursed tight as... The response of the fat cats ranged from fear to condescending humor, but they didn't say anything as they walked in, keeping their lips pursed as tight as their assholes. Later, the leafletting moved on to the Officers Club in Bayswater, which designs to allow enlisted men inside once a year on Thanksgiving. Fewer leaflets were given out, but people were much more willing to talk about the war. Thank you to the generous officers for letting us go inside of your O Club and, I don't know, touch the hot dog rollers that we don't get. Use the computer that isn't completely full of viruses, and drink the coffee that hasn't been freeze-dried, I suppose. Now we've got one with if you're old and older than me and dying even faster, Hanoi Jane. So this one is called Exiles U.S. Activists Meet in London. American anti-war activists Jane Fonda and Tom Hayden met with several members of the UAEB on December 26 while they were in London. Discussions centered around work currently being done on the bases of England and ways of coordinating projects here with those in the U.S. Fonda and Hayden have been working since last spring with the Indochina Peace Campaign in the U.S., a non-sectarian, single-issue organization whose two basic aims are to end U.S. aggression in Indochina and to support the right of self-determination for the people of that country. They said that in the long run, the IPC would grow because the majority of American people who wanted peace would see that Nixon does not, but that the anti-war movement was temporarily weakened by Mr. McGovern's loss in the elections and by the firm control that the administration holds in the House. This is why they said it is important to mobilize world public opinion behind the liberation forces in Indochina. The IPC will be helping the UAEB by making available a copy of the film of the FTA show, the Fuck the Army show, a group that toured the Far East with Jane Fonda 2 years ago entertaining troops. That documentary is actually on Netflix, I believe. I have not gotten around to watching it, but it is Jane Fonda and a lot of other celebrities at the time who were going around doing anti-war stuff. Jane Fonda was a big anti-war person. She got a lot of shit for it back in the day. As I said, Hanoi Jane was the nickname. If you don't know what, people didn't like anti-war activists in the first place, as you can imagine, because you're basically saying America bad. But she got her photo taken, I think, on a piece of North Vietnamese artillery, and smiling and doing a peace symbol or something like that, just acting goofy. And the press just kind of tore her up for that. And she even was just like, "Yeah, I shouldn't have done that. I apologize." Her thing was never just like, "Yes, we love the North Vietnamese." It was, we shouldn't be killing people there and being killed there. A thing that gets lost in translation a lot for a lot of the real boomer heads out there. So, as I said, this is American Exile in Britain. I'll probably read a little bit more from these in the future. I do like this one because there are a lot of people up in Canada. I'm going to see if I can find some Canadian newsletters as well. But a lot of people had to flee, and they had to go somewhere if they didn't want to go die in Vietnam. So, and as I said, this is before the pardon that Carter said everybody can come on home. We're not going to prosecute you for it. It's still a good 4 years off. So a lot of interesting stuff in here. But again, also a lot of the same stuff that every other newspaper was talking about at this time. So as always, thanks for watching, guys. Feel free to subscribe, all the things that they tell you to do. More importantly, though, Patreon and hellofawaydidie.com, where we have a lot of great things for sale. Got a whole bunch of new stickers and pins and patches coming in. Did just get in pins for the woodworkers. We're getting ahead with the little guillotine on it. Brand new pins in for that. Soviet pins, as always. You can see some of my pin collection back here. There's a little Deep Space Nine one there too. But we got all that stuff out there. If there's anything that you want to see, or if there's any artwork that you think that you might be great, contact me. I always pay for artists. If you got something and think it might make a great sticker or a great patch or something like that, hit me up and we'll get something going. But until then, we'll talk to you next week.